Oh, don't mind me. It was raining when I ran from my car to the house, so we're just dealing with this. Hey folks, my name is Jen, and today I have yet another book haul because, as we all know, I have zero self-control. Sizable stack of books here that I have accumulated because of my stress levels lately. Some of them, however, are for a purpose, so I can make excuses for them. I cannot with my cat. She chewed on another book. Do you see this? Probably not. Teeth marks. Oh, that binks. Ooh, that binks. Okay, ignoring that tiny kitten teeth marks, I have 3 books here which were on my most anticipated reads of the year list, so I purchased those because those have come out. The first of which is now has cat teeth marks in it, is The Ghost of Rose Hill. This is by R.M. Romero. This pretty little book is following Elena. She is a biracial Jewish girl who dreams of being a professional violinist. Her parents would rather she pick a more stable career choice in the future, so to basically show her the error of her ways, they have sent her to Prague to stay with, I believe it's her aunt? Yes. Is to stay with her aunt, who is an artist, because they want her to experience what a humble and poverty-stricken existence it is to be an artist. She basically pick a career that's not as, like, stable. While she is there, Elena ends up spending some time in the local forgotten Jewish cemetery, and there meets a ghost boy. As the two of them grow closer, she also encounters this mysterious man in the shadows who promises her a chance at reaching her musical dreams, as well as the ability to stay forever with the ghost boy that she's falling for, if she does some things for him, because this creepy, mysterious man in the shadows wants her music. So this sounds like it's going to be potentially heart-wrenching, but also really beautiful and maybe kind of spooky. I did not know this at the time. I just learned this when I, got the book, but it's told in verse, which is really cool. I've only recently read a couple of books in verse. Those were both by Elizabeth Acevedo over the past year or so. So I'm excited to keep reading books like that, because I think it's really pretty and it's a really pretty way to accomplish a good story. So I think I might try to save this one for an October read, because ghosts and stuff, but yeah, I feel like this is probably going to be spooky, kind of emotional read. Another book that I was highly anticipating this year is My Fine Fellow. This is by Jenica Cohen, and this is basically a gender-swapped foodie version of My Fair Lady, which is based on the George Bernard Shaw play of Pygmalion, both of which I really love. So very excited about this. I even just told my mom about this recently, and she's excited to read this after me. So this is following, first and foremost, Helena Higgins, who is the top of her class at the Royal Academy and wants to basically take the world by storm with cooking and the culinary arts, and also Penelope Pickering, who wants to bring her Filipina heritage and cooking style to the masses, basically, and make them sit up and pay attention to it, because her flavors are just as good as, traditional English ones. The two girls end up running into Elijah Little, who is a young Jewish man who has like the gift of perfect flavors and really wants to be taken seriously with his pastries. However, no one in London is willing to let a young Jewish man have like a shop front, so instead he basically has his wares out in the street. He's a vendor. The two girls encounter him and decide to try to remake him into the perfect gentleman chef as like a project. And there's supposed to be like a lot of shenanigans and possibly romance involved. So I'm pretty excited about this. I think it's going to be, first of all, it's an interesting time period. It's the 1830s, and second of all, I think this is going to be like a really fun and funny read, and I like the diversity that is kind of playing through here as well. Yeah, I'm really excited to see this take on My Fair Lady, like this different take on it. So, last book out of the anticipated reads that I grabbed was the Stardust Thief. This is by Chelsea Abdullah. So this is following Luli Al-Nazari and her bodyguard Jin. She is a criminal who basically hunts down and sells illegal magic. When during one of these jobs she saves the life of a prince, his father, the Sultan, gives her a choice that either she can be executed or she has to basically find and steal for him this magical artifact, which is going to basically revitalize their desert country, but at the price of sacrificing all of the jinn. Which is not great for Luli because, hey, she has a jinn bodyguard and she, you know, likes him. And I guess there's also some secrets that her jinn bodyguard is also hiding, that there's like mystery surrounding him as well. So the artifact appears to be an ancient lamp. For what I remember seeing of summaries that people have given online, this sounds like the author is taking different tales from Arabian Nights and kind of like putting her own spin on it and doing like a, yeah, basically putting her own spin on it and weaving a new tale. So I thought this sounded really, you know, adventurous and whimsical. I'm really wanting to try to get into more fantasy, like try to expand my horizons in fantasy a little bit, and this sounded like the perfect book to do that with. It also sounds like it is going to be the first in what is to be a trilogy, so that's pretty cool as well. Okay, then I got a series of books kind of just for the hell of it. So yeah. The first of these is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This is book one of the Winter Night trilogy, and this is following Vasya. Vasya and her family live at the edge of the Russian wilderness. It is really dark and cold there for a good chunk of the year. Vasya's family has always been full of stories and magic. Unfortunately, her mother died when she was younger, and when she is, I believe might be a teenager by this point, her father brings home a new wife. Vasya's stepmother is extremely devoutly religious and wants to stamp out all of the old traditions and stories and magic because she thinks it's blasphemous or whatever. So she wants to get rid of it, and she will not allow anyone in their household or in the village to do any of the old safeguards, basically, to keep the bad things out of their area. Vasya knows that this is a terrible idea because there are some things that you don't quite understand, and spooky shit's one of them. She knows that there will be terrible repercussions for not honoring the old gods and trying to keep bad, like, negative things out. And unfortunately, she was right. Vassia is also struggling with the fact that she has certain secret magical gifts that she has been trying to hide. And now she has basically an extremely zealous enemy in her new stepmother. So she's not only dealing with that, but now she also has to contend with a evil that has popped right out of, like, her family's old stories and is ready to destroy basically everything she loves. So I love Catherine Arden's other series, Small Spaces. I'm so excited about book 4 that is coming out. So I wanted to check out some of her other books. Small Spaces for middle grade, I believe this series is YA. So there's like, I've skimmed the first couple of pages and this reads like, the tone is very different. Of course, it's a different series, it's a different age group. But this sounds like it's going to be kind of dark and spooky and magical, and also dealing with different issues and like a weaving of potentially some like old Russian lore and fairy tales and stuff like that, which is interesting. I read The Girl Who Speaks Bear at the end of last year, and that is kind of has to do with Russian folktales as well, and I really enjoyed it. So I think this is going to be also really enjoyable. Because of the winter theme of it, I might save this for like the winter time to read, but yeah, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Then we have The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This is the manga classic version of that book. I know, I read it already this year. I've mentioned it in a lot of videos. I really enjoyed it. So, when I found out that there was a manga version of it, I had to pick it up. Very excited to read this. Probably going to pick this up soon, just because the artwork looks pretty cool. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to find a good image of like the Count. That's him, basically. So yeah, if you heard me talk about the Count of Monte Cristo before, and Dante's promising future love of his life and everything right before his wedding, gets accused of being a Bonapartist, which is a really bad thing to get accused of in France at the time, and he is promptly, because he's plotted against by 3 people who are jealous of his life, and 1 man who, to prove him innocent, would ruin the man's career. So basically 4 people conspire to ruin this promising young man's life, and they imprison him within Chateau d'If, which is this island prison off the coast of France, and he is there for 14 years until, through some ingenuity, he is able to escape and begin to plot his revenge against the people who so ruined his life. I loved the book. Excited for the manga. So it is an adaptation of Dumas's classic. The adaptation is by Crystal S. Chan, and the art is by Nakman Poon. Then I've got some classics of sorts that I grabbed. One is Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. I have actually read this before. We read this in high school. I remember really enjoying it at the time, although I didn't understand a good chunk of what the hell was going on, but I still really did enjoy it. Found it to be pretty whacked out and crazy, and there is a saying within here, so it goes, and I remember like just using that in conversation and such for a while after that, actually. So part of the story centers on the firebombing of Dresden in Germany, and it also follows Billy Pilgrim's like odyssey through time. So some of it is his participation in World War II, some of it's afterwards and his life, and then there's also pieces of it that take place further in the future when he's been abducted by aliens. Potentially. It gets a little, like I said, whacked out and crazy there. It is bouncing between timelines quite frequently, but at the core of this novel is an anti-war message, and yeah, I remember just really, really enjoying the craziness that was in here. I've been wanting to revisit Kurt Vonnegut and actually read more of his stories, because I've read bits and pieces about him as a person, and he seems like he was a very eccentric, interesting person, so I've been wanting to get more into some of his writings, and I figured a great place to start would be just to revisit the one book of his that I have actually read. So Slaughterhouse-5, I think it's going to be, I don't know, I'm hoping that I enjoy it as much as I did when I was like 16 or 17 and didn't know what the hell was supposed to be happening. Then I also decided to grab The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I'm gonna butcher French entirely. That's just my lot in life. So this is a classic that I think a lot of people, when they read it in childhood. This was not something that I ever read in childhood. I can't even remember really anyone talking about this when I was a kid, to be honest, but I've been hearing it brought up a lot lately. So this basically is a short, illustrated-ish tale of a pilot who becomes stranded in the desert and awakes one morning to find this small boy asking him to help him draw things. It says, the pilot realizes that when life's events are too difficult to understand, there is no choice but to succumb to their mysteries. He pulls out pencil and paper, and thus begins this wise and enchanting fable that in teaching the secret of what's really important in life has changed forever the world for its readers. I've heard that this is a very, like, kind of philosophical and really comforting read. That's what people normally say about it. It's very philosophical, very comforting, very like happy, but kind of sad, but also kind of happy at the same time. I've heard people say, but yeah, I've never experienced it. It's not that long, so I feel like I could pick this up basically anytime and see what's what. But yeah, I think it sounds like it's gonna be really cute. I also really like the artwork that's in here. I think Antoine, yeah, he illustrated it too. He wrote and illustrated it. So yeah, that's really cool. Another classic book I picked up. This is the Ghostly Tales and Eerie Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. I've also been wanting to get more into Edgar Allan Poe. I've read only a few things of his. The Cask of Amontillado is one that really freaked me out when I was younger. I've read The Raven, of course, Annabel Lee, and I also read The Mask of the Red Death. I read that one when I was a kid. That really terrified me, and that's honestly probably why I didn't reach for his stuff for a long time, is because of how much The Mask of the Red Death scared me as a child. But yeah, so this is just some of his tales and poems. This is an illustrated edition. It's really cool. This is, I believe, the Mask of the Red Death scene, is what the cover is. And I'll show you one of the pieces. I think they're just really gorgeous. Like, that's so beautiful and so beautifully done. So yeah, I'm excited to read some more of Edgar Allan Poe, and I think this will be a perfect read to set aside for October and like spooky season. Then I ended up grabbing a piece of, I guess it's kind of a classic, but it's like true crime. And that is In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. So on November 15th, 1959, a truly bloody scene occurred in Holcomb, in the small town of Holcomb, Kansas. So there were 4 members of this family called the Clutters, and they were all killed by a shotgun blast straight to the face. At close range, apparently. There was like no motive and no suspects. So this is basically Truman Capote's reconstruction of the murder and the investigation from the time of, you know, the investigation itself through the capture, trial, and eventual execution of the family's murderers. So when people talk about true crime, this is the mother of all true crime books. This is like the big one that people reference. I think this was made into a movie, if I remember correctly, but I've also never seen that at all. But yeah, I thought it was, if I'm so interested in true crime, listen to a lot of podcasts, and I've read a couple of books, I should probably pick this up and actually give it a read. So, and then the last bunch of books here that I got are all nonfiction, and they are all for book research. So I'm currently working on a mystery novel which is set in Vermont in the past. So I had some need of some books to help me. So the first couple have to do with Vermont history. One of these is the Roadside History of Vermont, and this is by Peter S. Jennison. So this is basically covering, like it says, the roadside history. It says that every turn of the road has a story to tell of people and events spanning more than 3 centuries, notable people, and stirring events. So this is like your basic short history lesson of, I think, just about every town in Vermont, from what it looks like in here. So that's really cool. Of course, it's not that thick of a book, so it's gonna have like a summary of events, but that's still like really helpful. Then I also grabbed The Hidden History of Vermont, and this is by Mark Bushnell, and this is covering, as it says, Unseen Side of the Green Mountain State. So this is going to be about more topics that maybe aren't brought up in that Roadside History of Vermont guide, and things maybe not a lot of people know, what isn't really taught so readily, or what you wouldn't find in like an encyclopedia or a simple Google search. So I'm really interested in that too. And along those lines as well, I also grabbed Wicked Vermont by Thea Lewis, and this is the darker side of the Green Mountain State. So if you recognize anyone, so that's Chester A. Arthur, if I'm getting people correct. I think that's Chester A. Arthur's picture. He was a president back in the day, and so yeah. So, and then we also have H.H. Holmes, if you recognize him. He is, of course, the terrible serial killer from Chicago. I believe he was born and raised in Vermont, but he at least went to school in Vermont before he ended up out in Chicago. So yeah, it's about more of the darker and unseemly parts of Vermont history, which I'm also interested in. And then, because it's a mystery, I have some other pieces here. So I have a couple of books that I actually learned about from a podcast that I've been listening to, Vintage Homicide. And one of these is Henleys Formulas for Home and Workshop. This is edited by Gardner D. Hiscox, M.E. This was written in 1907. It was last revised in 1927. This is like the 1970s edition, but it hadn't been revised since like the 20s. So there's actually like a warning in the beginning of this that you need to consult your physician before you try anything that's in here, because it was written so very long ago. There's a lot of things in here that are no longer considered healthy. This has recipes and formulas for a lot of stuff. Alloys, adhesives, different foodstuffs, beverages, etching, enameling, embalming fluids, photography stuff, plating, typewriter ribbons, veterinary formulas, hygiene related things, cosmetics, how to do your stuff at home, basically for home and office is what it basically is. I thought that this is a perfect reference guide to have around, not only because it will help me with some details with what I'm working on, but it is also exactly the type of thing that my main character would probably have in her house or office. So, wonderful. The other book that I heard about on the podcast is The Poisoner's Handbook, and this is by Deborah Blum. This is Murder and the Birth of Forensic Medicine in Jazz Age, New York. So, poison was a way that people were able to commit murder pretty easily back in the day. But in 1918, the new chief medical examiner, his name was Charles Norris, was appointed to the job, and together with toxicologist Alexander Gettler, it says, the duo set the justice system on fire with trailblazing scientific detective work, triumphing over seemingly unbeatable odds to become pioneers of forensic chemistry and the gatekeepers of justice. So this is about the beginnings of forensic science, kind of as we know it today, although it's a lot, well, in some cases there's been a lot of strides, and in some cases we haven't done so great. Depends on what the forensics portion is, but so yeah, this is basically about the history of that. So this is great because it gives me more context. It's also fascinating because I'm nosy and interested in this kind of shit. And yeah, I think it's just a really good, I think it's going to be really interesting read, really fascinating. And the last book that I grabbed, which is also the last book that I had for research purposes, is the Forensic Case Book, and this is The Science of Crime Scene Investigation by N.E. Genge. So this references a lot of true stories, but it has information about how forensics are actually done. So securing a crime scene and the different processes that are done therein, talking about blood spatter patterns, how to collect fingerprints and how that whole process goes, how those are identified, going into all the evidence that people pick up, hair, fibers, etc., fingernail scrapings, shit like that. So it's all the stuff about that basically, and the science of how this is discovered. There's also but yeah, there's specific examples that are given within here. It's not just about the, it's not just about the evidence surrounding the victim either. There's also, I believe, a section on writing forensics and how to identify that as differences in writing styles and things like that as well, and also talks about various careers within forensics. So this is, again, a topic that's interesting to me, but also great reference and contextual information for me for my writing purposes. So excited. So this is my very scarily shaky stack of books that I got again, because again, I have no self-control. However, at this point, I have also run out of room. So I am putting myself on a book buying ban. And yeah, I'm basically, I can't get any more for like a while, till the new year, basically, unless my friend and I make our little trip that we like to go to Parnassus down the Cape, a secondhand bookshop that we really like, that I mentioned before. We really like going there, so we might make a trip down there at some point this summer, if at all possible. So I might lift my ban for that, but not like I usually do. I'm only gonna let myself get like 1 or 2 books if we do that, but otherwise, yeah, I'm on a ban until 2023. So anyway, thank you so much for watching and looking at my shame yet again. If you have read any of these, let me know. Let me know if you enjoyed them, if you're interested in any of them. Well, you'll be hearing updates on how I felt about them when I get around to reading them. And yeah, if you have any more that are similar to these that you want to recommend me, also let me know about those, because I like hearing about book recommendations, although I am on a ban, so I'm not allowed to get any more right now, but I'll note it for the future. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for always watching. If you're new here, welcome and thank you. And if you haven't subscribed and would like to, please do so. A little button down there. Anyway, thanks guys. I hope you're having a wonderful week and you have more self-control when it comes to buying books than I do. I'll see you next time. Bye.